p.m. Central European time. A big hjärtlig välkommen. That's how you say a heartfelt welcome from Stockholm, Sweden, where I am sending to the webinar, How Can SRM Software Boost Supply Chain Sustainability? I want to thank you all for joining me today, wherever you may be sitting physically. I'm super happy that you're joining me here virtually. And as always, I will be your host then today, Sam Jenks, who I am then the Chief Growth Officer at Kodiak Hub. And as I often am, will be joined by my co-host, Charlie, the office dog. There he is, looking cute in his rain jacket as it was a rainy day earlier in Stockholm. It's an old picture. One way or the other, Charlie can be rather opinionated. If the, for example, mail person comes to leave off the mail, he might have a thing or two to say during today's content. So if you hear a bark, it's just Charlie adding his point of view. Short about Kodiak Hub, for those of you who do not know about us, Kodiak Hub is a provider of supplier management software. We provide a cloud-based supplier management suite that helps procurement and sourcing professionals, just like those of you in attendance today, to be able to build smarter and more sustainable supplier relationships with the help of deeper buying insights in the form of robust ratings and analytics. Kodiak Hub provides an ecosystem of applications and modules that our users can be able to plug and play to manage supplier information, risk, compliance, performance, and collaboration all from one place. During the course of today's webinar, you will all become more thoroughly acquainted with the Kodiak Hub solution and understand exactly how our users are leveraging our SRM software in order to drive supply chain sustainability. Without further ado, let's get into the agenda for today's webinar. During the next 30 minutes, we have a packed session where we'll try and thoroughly cover the following points, starting with defining SRM, understanding, of course, truly what supplier relationship management is and what purpose it can serve within your procurement team. Next, moving on to the section, a section that I've named the why, diving into really the vision behind SRM and, more importantly, supplier relationship management. What purpose does it serve within your organization, and why is it so important for procurement organizations of today to be able to adopt? After that, we'll shift our focus to the technology bits and delve into the current state of SRM with a tech focus, followed by a section that I've named a new reality, understanding how SRM plays a role in helping procurement to navigate the new reality that we all live in. Lastly, the main event, 6 ways in which SRM software can boost supply chain sustainability, including a bit of a live demo session in the Kodiak Hub solution for a few of those points. Lastly, then we'll land in a Q&A session. Like I mentioned in the chat bubble, feel free to be able to throw in your questions during the day's session about Kodiak Hub services or about the day's content as they come along. We don't want anyone to be forgetting the questions they are asking. And we'll, of course, then pick up those questions during the Q&A session as we then reach it. With no further ado, let's get into the day's content. Exciting. As SIPS describes it, supplier relationship management, or SRM, is a comprehensive approach to procurement, utilized to be able to manage and capture the post-value contract value from key business relationships. As we all know, SRM is best used to leverage the competencies of suppliers and build shared value relationships between buyer and supplier organizations. Capgemini reported just 5 years ago that in their Chief Procurement Officer survey, that 97% of responding CPOs found SRM to be a key priority in their procurement strategy. According to the exact same survey, it was determined that CPOs look towards SRM to do 3 primary things. First, create collaborative innovation. Secondly, reduce the total cost of ownership. And lastly, increase holistic supplier-related risk management. These things, I would say, in majority still stand, but it's become apparent during the last few years that SRM has a huge potential to make a significant impact within global supply chains, even outside of these three areas. So now that we know what SRM is, it leads us into the point, why is it so important? What is the vision behind SRM? Why is it important for your procurement team and to be applied within your organization today? SRM is in a procurement discipline and technology area that is constantly evolving, as many of you have likely noticed. There's new vendors, emerging continuously. There's new frameworks to be able to utilize. And as supply chain complexity continues to grow, so does the complexity of supplier relationship management. Luckily, the application of SRM software can make things just a little bit easier for you and your procurement teams. While SRM software can make great impact in your organization, it's really just providing a means or a vehicle. SRM software provides a means to transform the way that buyers and suppliers work together. But ultimately, the big why of supplier relationship management is very important for our organization at Kodiak Hub. And we talk about this rather often. We see SRM software, like I said, as a vehicle, a means to enhance the opportunities for sustainable trade and shared value creation. SRM, in our eyes, is ultimately a work tool to create winners on both sides of the trading table and make a buyer to supplier relationship really work as smoothly as possible. SRM software can ensure that you and your teammates in procurement and sourcing have a lot of information at hand to make more informed and holistic buying decisions. So you're not just putting your money based upon price within your purchasing decisions, but based upon a more holistic value approach. The future of supplier management, as we all know, is more holistic. It is more data-driven. But the sad fact is that, well, our personal applications have begun to surpass our professional applications. We talk about this all the time at Kodiak Hub. As a procurement professional, you can gather more information and insights during your morning run than you'd ever have when you step into the office. Directly in the palm of your hand, you can see steps taken, hills climbed, and calories burned. But where's that same intelligence when you step into the office and you want to be able to pick a preferred supplier based upon sustainability performance, or find innovative supplier partners, or pull forward basic supply chain compliance summaries? It's not so easy, is it? I'm sure many of you have these insights at hand, but they might also be spread out into a plethora of different solutions. Your application ecosystem for managing suppliers might look a bit like this, rather scattered. Credit checks are in D&B or credit safe reports retrieved by your finance team. Performance metrics sit into SAP or your ERP solution. Supplier collaboration might take place in Outlook. Segmentation, spend analysis, risk management, and due diligence is sitting in spreadsheets. Contract and compliance documentation in SharePoint. Data visualization, you might be utilizing a BI solution, and maybe your primary reporting is done utilizing PowerPoint. There's nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed about if this is your reality, because the reality is this is what you know, and many others work in this exact same fashion. In 2018, it was reported by Bain & Company and procurement leaders that 60% of procurement teams have no tools or rely solely on Microsoft Office tooling for SRM. And when it came to risk management and category management, that number rose to even 70%. Even more recently, in late 2019, State of Flux reported that 86% of procurement teams were still utilizing Excel spreadsheets as the primary software for managing supplier relationships and supplier information. This kind of spread out and homegrown ecosystem can do the job when it comes to supplier relationship management. But at the same time, it can make the job very manual and very person dependent, depending upon the procurement pro to be able to navigate within this larger net of solutions. Modern SRM software serves as a spider in the net, compiling third-party insights, existing data sets, and stakeholder input into one place. It's important that procurement teams work smarter, not harder, as time saving on operational tasks, as we all know, will continue to become more and more crucial during the coming years. And the fact is, the coming years will bring with it a new reality that we've already entered into and will continue to enter into. The COVID-19 situation has challenged your procurement and sourcing organization quite enough. But at the same time, your procurement, sourcing, and supply chain teams have increasing demands from internal and external demands on your supply chain, and more specifically, on supply chain sustainability. I don't need to tell you all, you're likely living it. Consumers want more sustainable and quality products and services. Legislation is requiring more supply chain transparency and visibility. And your senior leadership all along wants to make sure that you're on top of these things to remain profitable, have a competitive edge, and safeguard brand and shareholder value. The common denominator to meet these increasing requirements, to subside these increasing pressures, is of course enhanced supplier management. But ask yourself this question: do you really have the tools at hand to manage your suppliers, to build deeper supply chain transparency, meet the legislative directives, and enhance sustainable development in your global supply chain? Maybe not, but maybe you soon will. I'm here to show you the opportunities at your disposal. I want to show you that there is a simpler way of working. I'm here to sympathize with your challenges and to also understand the internal and external pressures that you're facing. I'm here really to highlight today the importance of supply chain sustainability, and also to present to you 6 ways that SRM software, just like Kodiak Hub, can be able to help you and your procurement team to boost supply chain sustainability. Moving into the first point in our list of 6 ways that SRM software can help your team to boost sustainability in your supply chain: KYS, short for Know Your Supplier. As you might be familiar with, Know Your Customer, or KYC, is a well-established discipline utilized primarily by financial institutions as a means of compliance and also then risk management. The growing importance and business importance of global supply chains will require your procurement and sourcing teams to quickly get a thorough view of prospective and existing relationships with your suppliers in a similar fashion, hence the growing need for KYS. Knowing one supplier is of an increasing importance, really, to safeguard shareholder value and ensure that you're collaborating with partners who fulfill environmental, social, governmental, and financial requirements that both you might have, but also might be legislatively issued upon your organization. As we've learned, information and trust have become a business's most valuable currency, a very valuable currency within your supply chain. And it's important that you start to leverage data and information availability in order to build trust with new suppliers and partners from the start of your relationships. Information such as financial status, sanctions, negative media, or engagement of politically exposed persons isn't always information that's easy to come by. Fulfilling this kind of KYS activity often entails a lot of manual search and a multitude of data sources, involvement of multiple teams in combination with homegrown risk assessments that are typically utilized within Excel. And as we indicated earlier in this session, it can be a rather scattered landscape of solutions to be able to really know your supplier. Modern SRM software can reduce the time spent searching for KYS insights by offering KYS suites via natively integrated third-party insights. What I want to do now is simply then switch over to the Kodiak Hub, and I apologize, this says Kodiak Rating. I realize that I have not changed that slide. The Kodiak Hub platform, as many of you know, we have actually rebranded recently from Kodiak Rating to Kodiak Hub. And this practical example I will then provide is how SRM software can be able to faster enable KYS. As we enter into the solution, we're able to then see our suppliers at a glance around the globe. And here we can be able to see indicated to us country and contextual risk of a particular country where we might have suppliers located. We can be able to break out groupings of suppliers here, but also then zoom further into a particular country to see the individual risk there. This is a macro and contextual risk, as I mentioned, built up of environmental, social, geopolitical, and financial aspects. You can jump directly into a supplier scorecard from this view, which helps you to be able to dive deeper into a particular supplier's profile in that case. If we load up the page here, then we're able to see directly on screen some insights about this supplier. And this is really a kind of control tower for a single supplier. Directly here, we can be able to see their credit score, which is fed in based upon a VAT or company registration number, the first indication of KYS, being able to have an understanding of the financial stability of the supplier pulled in via a third-party provider that we have as a default partner, Mode Finance, giving you natively integrated into our interface some financial stability results. Further down on the right-hand side, you can also see then media monitoring to stay on top of any type of current events, things that are then positive and or negatively impacting events. And you can even look to see the individual articles as you would like to, and open up these individual articles directly from the interface here. The last bit then for KYS capabilities on the right-hand side, as we see here, is then the Safe Source Premium, which is then, of course, sanction searches. As I mentioned, this is then a good way for you to be able to get a quick overview of the general information about a company, as well as then linked sources, adverse media, different types of subsidiaries which are linked, as well as then politically exposed persons within that particular organization. So you can be able to really do a deep dive before you start working with a supplier, but also during the relationship in that case. So you can really know who it is that you're getting into a collaboration with. As I mentioned, also the Safe Source rating, which we saw on the global map, is built up based upon environmental, social, financial, and geopolitical aspects. And this is pulled from various indices, which is then a contextual risk rating related to a single country, not the supplier itself, but it gives you a good indication of what are the potential risks that exist in the country that the supplier might be located within, helping you to better understand, okay, human rights risks or labor rights risks, maybe we need to dig deeper in our due diligence activities, or some type of tradability or currency risks, well, some reason for us potentially to be able to hedge in the contract with suppliers in a particular country in that case. That is then what I wanted to be able to show very quickly from a KYS perspective in the scorecard. Again, to just summarize some bits about the Safe Source, which is the macro contextual risk rating, financial bits, media bits, as well as then the Safe Source Premium to keep you on top of any type of adverse media, as well as then sanctions or blacklists that might be associated with the suppliers you're working with in that case. After you then know a little bit more about your supplier, well, in that case, you might be ready to hop into the second phase, which I would say is something that many SRM solutions can be able to help with, which is streamlining supply chain compliance. As it was found in a 2020 report by procurement leaders, 94% of CPOs responded to a survey that they have reaffirmed or renewed their commitment to sustainability. A commitment to sustainability is fantastic, but as we all know, action is even better. All of us recognize why sustainable procurement needs to become the new norm. To better understand exactly how procurement teams are planning to enhance supply chain sustainability, Kodiak Hub published a poll on LinkedIn where 342 supply chain and procurement professionals responded to a flash survey. The question that we asked, which sustainability initiatives are currently most important in your procurement practices? Supply chain compliance by far took the prize. Compliance remains one of the first steps to ensuring that you're working with sound suppliers, and SRM supported by software can streamline your ability to more systematically address supply chain compliance directly during supplier onboarding and with a certain regularity during the supplier lifecycle. Now, to show you some more concrete examples of how SRM solutions can make supply chain compliance easy, I'm going to switch my screen back again to the Kodiak Hub solution. And here I wanted to be able to show off a few aspects of the solution, a little bit of a walkthrough of the kind of workflow to be able to issue some activities to a supplier that would be able to enhance supply chain compliance. It can all started with adding a new supplier, right? And the only required fields you need to be able to do so in our solution is a supplier name, an ID, a country code, and an email. The rest of the information for KYS capabilities, but also for compliance-based capabilities, you can push to the supplier themselves in an onboarding or self-assessment activity in that case. Of course, getting data in is as simple as an API integration with a master data solution or import via an Excel as well in that case. When you have a base of suppliers that you want to be able to start managing in that case, you can be able to quickly determine what is the questions that we're going to ask a supplier, how is it that we're going to interact with them in a compliance activity. The way that the solution works within assessments is that you're able to build templates, which can either be very generic or very specific to a category or a type of supplier. So you can be able to address the KPIs that you need to, and also get back different types of documentation or responses in the format that fits the suppliers you're engaging with. For example, we'll show off then here a template that is in a draft format for suppliers in the raw material phase that are then located within EMEA. So that is the segment of suppliers we'll be interacting with here. In the template builder, this is where you're going to be able to then quickly determine what are the areas in which we want the supplier to report back to us, which we call rating areas, because each of these individual areas, you can be able to then build a rating based upon the responses that roll back in, based upon your predefined criteria. In the data check, you can be able to push to the supplier things that you do want them or do not want them to be able to report back in with. It's as simple as dragging and dropping in those data properties that we saw in the list format to be able to then give your suppliers the opportunity to A, check that the data we have is correct, or also respond back with new data. You're able to then explain expectations to them in a kind of opening letter. And then underneath each of these individual sections, you can be able to determine what are the different attributes or questions that we think are important for a supplier to respond back upon. There's different types of, relational capabilities, show this question if, skip this question if. You can be able to have uploads of documents from the supplier, and all of these then questions have a response set associated with them. Those response sets then have weights associated with them as well. Directly in the same builder, you're able to build up your emails that you will then be able to schedule out to a supplier and roll out so that they can be able to start responding back in that case. So via an email, they're able to get a link or a button, depending on which you want to utilize, so that they can be able to enter directly into this particular assessment that you have then built for them in that case. If we are ready to publish this draft, then we would do so. But the thing that I want to just quickly show you is kind of how you would be able to roll these out in that case. So say that we're trying to onboard new suppliers. We would then say that we're doing an onboarding of producers in that case. Very quickly here, we'd be able to choose then a published template that we have. So we'll utilize the supplier onboarding template. We'll pick some suppliers to send out to. And if we want to, again, we can utilize the filters and the different data properties to quickly choose a grouping, which we'll be able to filter and select. We can add those particular suppliers to this campaign, and then we can schedule out the emails that we have to roll out to those suppliers. These will then send out in a drip campaign. So along the way, we'll have complete visibility of whether they're opening or not. And at any point in which they respond, it will then send it will stop the sending chain in that case. Once we're happy with this, we can also, add attachments or anything of the sort, to code of conduct or any type of requirements, and we're ready to send off to the suppliers. That will then roll out to the grouping of suppliers that we sent off to. And directly when they receive that, they will be able to enter in via their email and to be able to then just show the supplier view. This is then a preview of the assessment. It's important to focus on the user experience and the user interface for the supplier equally as much as it is for the user of the Kodiak Hub platform, primarily because compliance requires engagement, and engagement requires a good experience. For us, we try and simplify that experience down to, like I said, emails that have links that are personalized. They roll out to the supplier. If they have data in here, it will be pre-populated. To move through the assessment is very simple. They're able to see when they are responding to different types of questions, a kind of status bar. When they need to upload documents, they're able to see that. When they're needed to upload expiry dates associated with documents, then they're also able to see that. When a supplier then responds back, you're able to start getting the benefit of reports directly away. You're able to see how suppliers have fared within the response that they've sent in. So directly, you can be able to see a quick view of the different areas in which they've responded back in the onboarding or self-assessment activity. And you can even dive deeper into the individual response if you would like to. Here, you can be able to directly see different areas that have been marked as risk areas and the individual questions in why it is that they have been marked as a risk supplier in that case, as we saw within the list format. Here we also then see that all questions have then responses associated with them. Responses have weighting associated with them. These are things that are based upon our customers' predefined criteria. So you can be able to quickly spot discrepancies, but also opportunities in line with the things that you find to be most most important for your organization, really. Any type of documentation shared with you as well will then be seen within the supplier scorecard, where the compliance documentation sits. If we just toggle over there really quickly to be able to give you a view within the scorecard, yes, a lot of data and information sits, the different data that you have either uploaded or the supplier has shared, notes that you can be able to take for you or other for users, but also then documents sit here. So you can be able to quickly sift between and find documents. Things that are expired will give a user a notification, and you'll also be able to quickly see who it is that has uploaded this document to be able to give you some type of overview in that case as well. The ratings, when they roll in, you're also able to see reflected not only in the reports, but in the supplier scorecard. So you can be able to start seeing value progression over time, both within a performance context, but also within a compliance context. Some things, of course, that help our customers to be able to spot this at a higher level in that case, within a broader supplier grouping, are elements within the widgets in the analytics, for example. So here, for example, you could toggle on the different document types and be able to quickly see who is compliant, who is not, pull forward lists of those particular suppliers as well. So you can be able to interact with those and engage with those particular suppliers to improve upon their overall levels of compliance in that case. So that was a quick view of the solution from a supply chain compliance perspective, showing how that can be able to enhance. And on to number 3, just as it kind of would be useful when you see non-compliant suppliers, there's the ability to be able to better collaboration. And I now see that we're going to go over time here, as we typically do in these sessions with the live demonstration. The session will probably be another 10 minutes or so. So hang in there if you can. Otherwise, there will be, of course, a recording of this distributed to everyone after the session. Better collaboration and more open lines of communication are then, of course, very important to maintain during a supplier lifecycle. Offering buyer to supplier platforms for basic communication can be really beneficial to creating an open partnership, and it can be utilized for very simple things, sharing meeting minutes, but also to have version control of documents or contracts, but also for simple comms. These kinds of communication platforms can also be utilized to address more tactical initiatives, such as like corrective actions, nonconformities, development projects, or alike. Providing a simple way to be able to push forward processes and confirm action responsibilities can really go a long way in driving sustainable development and development really just overall within your supply chain. So if I switch back over to the the solution here to be able to show how this looks within the Kodiak Hub platform in that case, we'll then hop in to a single supplier's scorecard here, so we can be able to then quickly see some of the actions associated with this supplier. Also on the scorecard, as you see, you can be able to quickly see different types of actions that are both reposited, but also that might be ongoing in that case. Directly from this view, you can be able to enter into those actions, so you can quickly see the communication that's happening back and forth between you and the supplier in this portal. It's simple as just being able to write back and forth here. The supplier receives then a email notification where they can enter into a portal to be able to then communicate back and forth with you on whatever type of activity that it is that you would like them to. In this particular example, the supplier has, we've given them a code of conduct that they haven't signed. Well, in that case, you can be able to upload a document here so that they can, in fact, sign that code of conduct. And directly here, we're able to see the documents that we've uploaded, the supplier has uploaded, and a history of everything that's happened over time between us and the supplier. The supplier can be able to see the exact same interface. Of course, nothing else within the solution in that case, but they can also be able to push forward the progress of this. So when a supplier has completed a particular action that we have set out for them, if it's a corrective action or something of the sort, then there is some type of capabilities on their side to push forward the process, which will then be seen as an opportunity for things to be pending our approval, and we can approve any type of activities that the supplier has asked for us to approve and close out those particular corrective actions. All the documentation shared between the two users will then be reposited in the supplier scorecard in that case, with the rest of the documents as we saw previously on the scorecard in that case. So that is a good way, of course, to be able to drive development with your suppliers and also to be able to gauge any type of corrective actions and also to be able to manage those actions. On to number 4 on the list of 6 ways that supplier relationship management software can boost supply chain transparency, traceability, but most importantly, sustainability, enhanced supplier diversity. Supplier diversity is an increasingly important focus area of supply chain sustainability. And with the right tools at your disposal, measuring diversity and rolling out supplier diversity programs can be a lot more impactful. By definition, a diverse supplier is a business owned and operated by an individual or group that is part of a traditionally underrepresented or underserved group. Some common examples of diverse suppliers would be small business enterprises, minority-owned business enterprises, and women-owned business enterprises. Over time, the definition of diversity has expanded as well to businesses owned by other minority groups such as LGBTQ, veterans, and proprietors with disabilities, So you might be thinking, well, where in the heck does SRM come into play? Classification and assessment during the supplier onboarding activities are one of the key pillars to a stable, impactful supplier diversity program. So just as you require general business and compliance information during supplier onboarding or ongoing assessment, such as category, contact details, spend levels, or payment terms, insurance, or ISO certification, you should also require general diversity information to better segment and classify your supplier base. In a 2019 report from CVM Solutions, it was found that diverse suppliers, 89% of diverse-owned businesses are certified as such by an appropriate agency. And certification of diverse suppliers is something that should be promoted, recognized, celebrated, and incentivized. In order to ensure that supplier diversity will create real economic benefits for small and diverse businesses, your procurement organization should also aim to put targets on inclusive spending percentage. With that being said, I mean, we all know this, right? Procurement holds the spend, and therefore you hold the power. A more systematic, mode of operating within supplier relationship management with the support of software can help to make sure that you are becoming a champion of change, the change that you want to see within your supply chain. Moving into point number 5 on ways that supply chain sustainability can be boosted with supplier relationship management software: better due diligence and audits. Following up on levels of implementation is a perfect way to cement that supply chain compliance and sustainability is actually being reflected in your broader value chain. Due diligence in the form of audits aren't really necessary in all organizations, industries, or supply chains, but in those that audits are important, they remain an integral aspect of any responsible sourcing program. System support can greatly impact the outcome of an audit as being really useful or just plain busy work, really. And traditionally speaking, audits create a lot of paper and PDF reports that can't really be leveraged in that case to build any type of deeper intelligence about a supplier or a company. Solutions like Kodiak Hub focus on leveraging audits really to end the audit paper trail. In that case, we're focused on gathering robust amounts of information and data about a supplier. Our on-site audit app focuses on matching areas that are assessed by suppliers during the initial onboarding and self-assessment, with gauging real levels of implementation and objective evidence. So a perfect example of this, to be able to set the scene a bit and give it a little real-life scenario, is that a supplier initially reports that they have an ISO 14001 certification for environmental management in place. The document is in fact verified, but during the course of your relationship, you see that the supplier has in fact been exposed to adverse media due to some inconsistencies in their environmental management, whatever that might be. Upon that, you decide to do an audit. With the aid of SRM software, very much like Kodiak Hub, the following process could ensue. You can make a template that is ISO 14001 specific and match this within the KPI area of environmental management in which the supplier has previously assessed themselves. You can send out that audit checklist to an auditor, which the auditor can access and manage via a mobile app or their desktop. In the app, they can be able to see the audit agenda. They can also then fill in the checklist, take pictures, make notes, mark nonconformities, issue corrective actions, and also then submit the audit upon their completion. As a user of Kodiak Hub, you're provided with a sleek audit report, but the responses are also then able to factor into the supplier's overall rating, overriding the environmental management area in which they have previously assessed themselves, giving you a whole heck of a lot more insights than just a dead PDF report. Moving on to the 6th and final point on our session today, giving you access to best practices and standards is something that SRM solutions can be able to do to boost supply chain sustainability. To improve supply chain sustainability, the last thing you really want to do is try to reinvent the wheel. I mean, there exists a plethora of international, domestic, and industry-specific frameworks and best practices to measure sustainability performance, to ensure supply chain compliance, and also to enhance sustainable development in your organization. Kodiak Hub recognizes that one of the greatest resources really for building a collective knowledge base of sustainability best practices is to listen. It's to have big ears. We listen and learn from every customer that we work with. And as an output, we've developed a global library of content to ensure that our solution can offer solutions for supply chain sustainability rather than our customers needing to forge their own way forward. This library is fit with content to address supplier compliance, risk, and performance in line with various standards. These are just a few where there's a plethora on the platform itself, so that our customers can be able to draw from various inspiration from these standards, the other existing users, KPI management, ultimately to be able to drive forward based upon best practices, their risk, compliance, and performance management. So to show a bit of how this works in practice, I want to just quickly switch over to the Kodiak Hub solution so I can be able to actually show off the global library in that case. This is just a quick view of the global library. I'm not going to dig super deep into it as it is rather extensive and robust. The way it's broken down, of course, is that within the different KPI areas, there are individual attributes. These attributes are really just kind of a desired or expected or measurable behavior or criteria, a sub criteria, a KPI that we will then be issuing to a supplier. For example, we can be able to quickly, search for a particular attribute as we would need to in this library. And the way that it works is that each individual attribute has a question related to it and different values that then can be weighted in that case. So these individual questions in the global library are built up, like I said, upon different standards or different types of inspiration from existing users. And upon that, you can be able to simply utilize these, customize them on your own account, and be able to then weight them and the responses in the way that you see fit. So for this, to kind of extend this example, right, sustainability report in that case. If you yourself find a sustainability report, something that your supplier will be able to report back in with as something that's very important, well, then that's something that you might give 100 weighting to within the rating methodology. So you can be able to give them a top score if they do in fact provide back a sustainability report. If they do not in that case, well, then you might give them a 0. You might also mark that supplier as a potential risk supplier. And this is the same way that you can be able to do with various attributes. You can activate them locally on your account from the global library, utilize those individual attributes to weight in the back end so that it's matching your acceptance criteria within the different areas that you want to be able to assess your suppliers or have your suppliers to assess themselves in that case as well. So with that, I would like to simply thank you all for attending today. And I will toggle over to the Q&A section. I would love to be able to answer any questions that you might have about today's content or the Kodiak Hub solution in that case. I hope that today was able to inform, but also to inspire, as I know that there is a collective ambition of everyone that's in attendance today to be able to enhance supply chain sustainability. And I hope that you now understand how SRM and SRM software can be able to help you to do so in that case. We'll then wait now for a minute or two so that people can be able to ask questions in the chat bubble, and we will then answer those as they come in.